Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your loyal host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you tune in, you'll want to know that over the past 5 years, we've interviewed over 260 top voices of the consumer goods and retail industry. So do feel free to go into our website, fmcgguys.com, to be entertained and educated, hopefully, by some of the industry's top voices. In parallel with us doing the podcast in the last 5 years, we've also seen many grocery retailers and actually non-grocery retailers as well build their own ad businesses, something that we now commonly know as retail media networks. By the way, retail media, that concept didn't exist practically 5 years ago, I think. And this surge has obviously had a tremendous impact on the industry and effectively changing marketing and especially the way brands and retailers interact with each other, especially because it was always brands selling to retailers and now we find retailers selling to brands as well. And it means a lot of things around data, personalization. It is a fascinating world. And like anything else, these retail media networks rely on certain technologies to run their ads. And there's been a clear pioneer in the ad tech space that has won many retail accounts during the surge of retail media, no other than Criteo, who's decisively evolved from maybe the way I knew them originally was from a banner and retargeting solution to effectively being a full stack retail media suite, managing both the demand and the supply side. And in parallel, as the industry has grown, we've seen other companies appear in the last few years that offer maybe a more specific solution to different parts of ad tech. On the supply side, we've seen the surge of companies like our other guest, Pentaleap, that claim that to offer a better technology solution than the potentially more generalistic incumbent and leader, which is Criteo. And actually, we've partnered with both of these companies over the years, and you can revisit their appearances on the podcast on our website. We've also partnered with both Criteo and Pentaleap in our events. So Pentaleap was one of our sponsors at Candid Commerce London in February. Criteo, we did a partnership during Cannes with a very cool yacht. And why we're here today is because over the last weeks, we've seen some debate on LinkedIn about the degree in which there's a shift of preference of retailers towards a more composable solution or specialized solution in different parts of their ad stack, or if the leader, Criteo, is still going to be hegemonic in the coming years. And the fact is that all the companies seem to be winning business right now. So it's a happy place, and it's more about like where are we gonna go next. And I think it's very refreshing when there's like an open debate like that, because I think there's a lot of events, especially in retail media, where the people are relevant, but the conversation can be very generic sometimes. So I think that we found it all refreshing that there's actually some real arguments, some real differences on the table. And this is a small industry, so we all know each other very well. And that's why we're here today, to have an open conversation about the future in retail media and tech preferred by the retailers today and in the next few years. So very glad to be accompanied today by two titans of the industry, two very well-known people. So on one side, we have Andreas Reiffen, who's the CEO of Pentaleap, and the other side, we have Melanie Zimmermann, who's the general manager at Criteo, general manager of retail media at Criteo. Hi guys, the last time I saw you talking about how the industry is small, you were sitting together in a dinner in Antibes during the Cannes Lion Festival. Good to see you too.
Good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the intro, Daniel, and excited to see you this time on this podcast, Melanie.
And I think you're both, from what I've heard, you're both Germans based in New York City, more or less based in New York City, no?
We found out that we have actually lots of things in common. I think, Melanie, we got to know each other probably like 5 years ago.
Around 2019, 2020 in the early
It was when Melanie started at Macy's. I had been in retail media for a while already, and I helped Melanie to get up to speed with everything retail media. She's now an expert, and I probably can learn lots of things from her. And we found out we are born in the same region of Germany. It's like a 20 minutes drive from my little town to where Melanie grew up. And then we both moved to New York. We both got into retail media, and we ended up at the dinner at Cannes. So we have lots of things in common.
Yeah, the world is small, particularly in retail media.
It is indeed. Guys, it would be great if you could tell me a bit about like what you do in either company, and maybe a short. I did try to describe your companies, but I'm sure you can do it better. So Melanie, if you want to start.
Quickly, what I do at Criteo is I work closely across commercial teams, product and R&D to help shape our future direction for retail media, and importantly, bring also the voice of product back to our clients to continue to consult our clients how to best capture value from our expansive solutions.
Awesome. Andreas.
And I'm founder and CEO at Pentaleap. We deliver retail media ad tech. Our focus is very clear. We try to solve the relevancy problem in ad serving. So we serve hyper-relevant ads, and we connect all the demand through RTB into our ad server.
Excellent. So let's talk about retail media in general. So first of all, I wanted to do a little game with you. What would you say is the biggest myth about retail media that you'd like to bust right now? Who wants to go first?
Can I go first? There's so many, but I think one dynamic that I'm particularly fascinated about these days is that I see retailers and brands kind of moving different directions right now. And so I think on the retailer side, I see an increased focus on building their own walled garden, their old like front ends for their direct clients to buy media specifically with them. As you sit down with large brands and agencies, so they're truly struggling with the fragmentation, and they're looking for easier ways of buying. And I believe that it doesn't have to be an either or. There's a role and a place for retailer-specific front ends, but I also believe that particularly the largest investors, the brands and agencies that do business with a global scale and across many retailers, are increasingly commanding greater simplicities and better tools for running retail media at scale and investing with confidence. And so I think that's where one myth that is on my mind is that when you build, they don't necessarily come, right? Like a front end is an element of a retailer strategy, but it is not the sole thing that is going to help them grow. And so creating a greater connectivity in the ecosystem, I think is really paramount at this point.
Great. Andreas?
I would subscribe to this. Fragmentation is a huge problem. Getting back to the myth, I think a couple of years ago, retail media was seen as the holy grail or silver bullet to cash in for retailers and make a ton of money. And we see now that things are a little bit more difficult, and fragmentation is one aspect. It's hard. Well, it's easy to get shopper marketing trade dollars into retail media, but it's really difficult to acquire true media budgets. So the effort to stand up a retail media network and to really make a margin contribution is much higher than many retailers had initially anticipated. And so for me, that's probably one myth that everyone is now feeling. It requires quite some effort.
Yeah, I call it the honeymoon phase is over. Exactly as you pointed out, like in the early days, the brands were so excited about the new ways of doing business, new ways of reaching consumers, the accountability, the transparency, and there was an increased influx of media dollars, but brands are looking at their media investments relative to their top line. And when media spend isn't growing at the same pace as the top line with the retailer, then there's a point of compression. And that's where you start to hear some things from brands like, oh, it's becoming a tax. And it can't be a tax. If the industry continues to grow, then it needs to earn and deserve the dollars. And with that, there's a need for a much greater focus on what needs to be true for the demand side in order to continue to increase their level of investments.
And if we go back to the trade budget and shopper marketing, that is sort of a tax, right? Has always been. This is a cost of doing business with retailers, but the value unlock requires a solution for this fragmentation issue so that brands can actually spend money and see a return on their investment.
Yes, and that's why I go back to the myth of like if retailers all build out beautiful front ends, it will do a lot in terms of their internal ability to scale, tremendous amount of efficiencies that can be gained, and also a better experience provided to their direct clients. But it's effectively a modernization of their trade marketing and an efficiency benefit. Brands may not increase their investments due to now having a single retailer front end. So much greater focus needs to be placed at this point in the industry. And what are the tools and the tools that the brands and agencies will need to bring more investment into the ecosystem. And so I think that's truly the pivotal moment we're in retail media right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, no? Because when you hear like retail media network leaders speak about it, there's some that are like very admittedly admit that it's like you can't really separate retail media from like trade negotiations with suppliers, whereas others are more like, yeah, this is like a completely different business than our grocery buying business. So it has to be treated as a media channel, no?
I think it's not an either or. The way I look at it is there are different media buyer personas in the industry. There are the suppliers that are doing business with the retailers, and they're always going to remain important. But what they often look for is simplicity, outcomes, deep planning and collaboration with the retailers. They are not necessarily professional media buyers always, though, particularly if you think about the mid to long tail. And then the large brands and agencies, they may be looking for more holistic views, more effective tools to manage and measure their spend. And so that's, to me, where it's just not a one size fits all. And we need to understand that the industry needs a diverse set of solutions for various different media buyer personas to buy in the future. And that's why I think that there is a role and a place for trade marketing modernization, but at the same time, there needs to be an opening up to additional budget sources. And with that comes a whole new territory of things retailers will need to navigate.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you guys, what you do basically is speak with retailers day in, day out. If you could give me like one main frustration you hear from them when it comes to retail media, what would that be?
Oh, I would say that as retail media is no longer a side hustle, they are under tremendous pressure to keep scaling their ad revenues. At the same time, they are also continuously under pressure to scale and grow their digital merchandising business and continue to sell goods. And so as ad revenues are increasing and ad density is increasing, the internal pressures within retailers are mounting. And that is requiring, that's driving some greater focus on relevancy. That's driving greater focus on alignment from both a technical and organizational standpoint. So a lot of retailers are thinking through what's the future organizational incentive alignment to have teams work towards common goals across merchandising objectives and advertising objectives. And also from a technical standpoint, the days where like the organic relevancy was separate from the advertising algorithm is nearing like an end. And it's not only about the alignment in that context, it's importantly about new tools that retailers will need to make optimal decisions holistically and take that friction out, because the friction is not healthy. And ultimately, all the teams are there to serve a common customer. And so the industry needs new tool sets in order to navigate that in the future.
It's hard, Daniel, to pin this down to one single thing. I think the overarching problem is how do you scale your media business? And it's important for retailers to bring the margin in. So when you go down one level, I think it's probably 4 different points that matter. It's how do you serve relevant ads without killing the user experience on site? You don't want to have cluttered websites that your users don't like, because in the end you have to sell products. The second one is what we talked about, the fragmentation issue. You somehow have to funnel in budgets from where brands already spent the money. You will always still have this private markets thing where you sell directly to your brands. And then it's a high level of fragmentation across the industry. So at least you have to tackle the fragmentation within your own walled garden. And then it's probably how do you allow brands to easily spend money across a multitude of different channels? On-site, sponsor products, display, on Meta, on Google, like wherever people are active and spend their time. And the last one, the fourth aspect is it's so crucial for retailers to bring additional margin in to play that game against companies like Amazon, that what you pay for tech matters a lot, because it immediately impacts your EBITDA margin you have. Mm-hmm. And so overarching problem is how to get scale with those 4 aspects underneath.
Yeah, it's interesting because it happened with brands selling on e-commerce that at the beginning, the important thing was to be there. And I think we've gone past that stage. I think, Melanie, you referred it to like the honeymoon period. And I think that we're at a different stage, no? Where like there's the details and the bottom line that count as well. So in the last few weeks, I think it was like 3 weeks ago or something, we saw an Adweek article coming out speaking about how Criteo was the market leader and newer companies like Pentaleap were starting to were growing as well. And there was kind of an open question if like they were losing market share or not. And then we saw another article with from Kiri Masters, who's a well-known retail media influencer, and then our very own Andreas here also did an article. So I'll bring it to you, Andreas. In your opinion, and if you look at the evolution of the retail media ecosystem, how would you briefly summarize what's happening right now? Also based a bit on the article that you wrote. By the way, we'll leave links in the show notes to all these articles. The comments are also very relevant because there's some debate there. So very refreshing, by the way.
Yeah, let me try to summarize this briefly. In the past, there was a model where you where the incumbent sold ad tech, bundled with access to budgets, I would say. So this means you choose a product not only because of the value of the product itself, but also whether you can get budgets that flow through this product, which we can divide into 2 aspects. And one is sales in the early phase. So before, it was essential to support retailers on the sales side and have a sales force to go after brands and bring the dollars in. And this was, I think, a tremendous help companies like Criteo could provide, so that actually ad tech also came with actual revenue. Over time, as the market matured, many companies have moved the sales function in-house. So the value of this probably decreased over time. And then there was a second aspect, which is there were companies like Sky or Packview and Flywheel, and they already had budgets. Usually they were managing campaigns on Amazon, and they had big budgets in those tools. And they were connecting through those retail media ad servers to deliver budgets. And the problem for us as startups was that those API integrations are incredibly hard to build and very costly to maintain. So in the early days, we tried to partner with companies like Sky, and they always said, well, you just have those 2 clients and it's not worth the effort. So demand came kind of exclusive to those that were leading the market. And this, of course, limited competition to some extent. What happens right now is that there's a technological disruption going on. And this is the new retail media RTB, which is not to be confused with a broader RTB in the programmatic space. Think of it.
Clarify RTB, real-time bidding, right?
RTB is real-time bidding. In this context, it's simply an easy, low-cost way of connecting demand from big ad tech platforms, whether it's Google or Trade Desk or Microsoft, so that those companies can also show on-site ads that are in the same way endemic. The big difference is that it's very low cost to maintain this. And what we are now seeing is that more and more of the startups are building those RTB connectors. And this means it's actually, from the retailer perspective, a very healthy development, because now you can choose which tech you would like to have and the dollars will still flow through. You don't lose access to brand dollars just because you switch your tech. And this stimulates competition and is, I think, a good thing for the industry to catch up with Amazon that is quite a bit ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to unpack this topic a bit if that's okay. So I think, Andreas, you made some great points here, particularly on the increasing role of retailers' own sales teams. So we've indeed seen this over time, that more and more retailers have built out in-house sales teams. They excel particularly in being able to bridge the conversations with merchants and the brands, particularly the brands that are doing directly business with the retailers. And so many retailers have seen tremendous success with that, and that is a really strong direction. We've simultaneously seen continued desires from retailers to augment their own direct sales efforts with our demand-side solutions and partnerships. So for us, it's never been either or. We've built a model that is one of modularity and choice. And so the majority of our retailers simultaneously leverage their own sales teams as well as leveraging our own demand side solutions and teams to access agencies, large global JBPs with agencies and brand teams, and also access the various demand-side connections that we've built. As Andreas pointed out, there's an increasing desire from retailers to access budgets above and beyond, and that's a strategy that we've been pursuing for a long time. The fact that there are now other players also building demand-side connections is truly a validation of the strategy that we've been pursuing. To Andreas' point, it has been hard for other players to replicate API-side partnerships. We are the player that has built more than 10 demand-side partnerships at scale, and we have pipes that work and that have been sustained over time. Andreas is also right that it's very hard for other players to replicate it because that is significant technical work for both the ad tech player as well as the third-party partners. That's why it is very turnkey for our retailers to work with us and get instant and immediate access to all the various platforms that we've connected to. And by the way, these are the platforms that Amazon, Walmart, and others are connected to as well. Those are the platforms that are being used by large commerce media buyers today to manage their spend. As it relates to RTB, you have heard from our CEO repeatedly, we are on this journey as well. We are investing in RTB, and we are in a leading position on the demand side. We're applying all the learning so we've gained and building demand side connections into it. I think what's key on RTB, it's just not enough to create a connectivity and a technical connection. I find there's tremendous amount of discussion of what's technically possible, but we need to importantly keep our customers in the center. And what I mean with this is that there's a lot that needs to be true in order for the demand to come in. And we know that firsthand because we have worked with 220 retailers across the globe on what it means to bring demand successfully into their ecosystem. For example, and Andreas hit on this earlier as well, retailers have dual objectives, selling advertising and selling goods. So it will not be viable for any RTB connection to just purely flow dollars into a retailer's e-commerce environment. There needs to be there need to be controls around relevancy and ad serving. There need to be a lot of key capabilities in order to make this work for the brands and for the retailers at the same time. There's also tremendous amount of work required in the back end. Think about financial flows of like who pays who and when and how. There's a lot of depth really to stand out these, not only stand up the connections, but then to make sure that they actually work and scale. And so absolutely, RTB is a new nascent development. We're excited, we're investing, and ultimately we're seeing this as an augmentation and extension of the demand side connection we've built historically. And so again, I'm not surprised that there is more activity in the ecosystem and other players building connections too, but I see that as a validation of the strategy we've been pursuing for years.
And if I could quickly respond to this. So first of all, I do agree. And look, Melanie, we are in total agreement about the fragmentation issue, right? I see this in the same way. And I also see that this is very high up on the Criteo agenda. I think the key point I'm trying to make here is, if you look at the situation in the past, this came very exclusive to the market leaders and the ease of RTB implementations, and also the pursuit of big ad tech companies to somehow deliver demand into those retail media walled gardens. They will just level the playing field to an extent so that there is choice, and it's not a huge risk to move from one product to another because you would lose all that demand. And that's a good thing for retailers because it stimulates competition. And in the end, it will boil down to how well does the tech actually work. And it will also to some extent boil down, what's the price you pay. And that's all things when we talk to retailers that we feel has caused quite some frustration in the past. But this is now something that is for the better of the ecosystem, in my opinion.
For sure. And what you pointed out is there's a build required, both on the platform side as well as on the for various like partners and ecosystem. And so just like it was not hard, but like there were considerations for third-party API platforms to build and connect via API. There will also be considerations in the partner ecosystem on like what do they put their R&D against. So I welcome and embrace the fact that there will be various players trying to build connections. It's still a significant undertaking, and it will need to be proven who ends up being able to stand up RTB connections and operate them at scale with actual dollars flowing through. To me, it's not only about like who's first at having some kind of ad call go out. Like it is truly about like bringing in volume that matters to the retailers, and then also doing that in a way that is conducive to their core business. And so I embrace and welcome many companies chasing that same direction. It validates the direction that we've been pursuing, and I'm keeping my focus on doing the right work the right way, and of course fast. And we'll see.
And when you talked, Andreas, about the leveling the play field, what does that mean? Also, as you know, I'm not a retail media expert. Some people think I am, but I'm actually not. So it may be a very, very basic concept that I'm missing here.
Yeah, I mean, with leveling the playing field, look, speaking from our perspective, and I'm also in touch with many other startups, it was really hard in the past to position your tech, even though the tech might have been stellar, because it posed a huge risk on the retailer side to move from one tech stack to another, because with that move, the demand that was flowing through was gone. And now you're in a position where you can actually move and you take that demand with you. And this means that, again, tech will matter, and prices will matter. And startups have sold at very low price points to somehow fight that disadvantage they had. And leveling the playing field means that now there are choices, and it's healthy because it will stimulate innovation, and it helps retailers to just figure out what are their needs, which is a tech stack that actually fits well. And then they can move if they find something that might suit their requirements a little bit better.
Yes. And I would also like to add, I think it's critical to keep a lens on providing the best tools for brands and agencies, because that will ultimately drive the best demand and outcomes for the retailers as well. And I think what sometimes doesn't get addressed sufficiently is that it's not only about the connection. It is importantly also about enabling all the use cases for the brands, the insights, the tools, the features. And so I think that's what also sometimes gets forgotten. Like, you can have a connection, but that ultimately the output can only be as good as the input. What I'm trying to say, if the underlying ad server doesn't have the breadth and depth of capabilities and features, then any output and any third-party platform, if you're in Sky and Packview, but the underlying ad server that's connected isn't actually enabling all the use cases, the clients and brands and agencies will not be able to get the full value. And so I think that's where I embrace an environment where there will be multiple ad servers with connections. What we at Criteo are keeping our laser focus on is being the best solution for brand and agencies and retailers, and keeping our focus on what are the problems we can solve for them beyond just the connection, right? Because for me, while other people are working towards connection, we have connection. Now for us, our laser focus is how do we enable the use cases and drive value for our clients.
I'm equally excited about exactly this. I think it's very cool what's currently happening, because I clearly it's about what features do you provide, what functionality do you provide, how well do your different components work together, and that's I think what really will move this whole market forward is that in the past, you had to just stick with one solution that had to handle all different aspects perfectly. And it's such a dynamic space that it's really difficult for a single solution to always be the best in each component. And if you like what you can see retail media tech has two sides. There's an ad serving side where also those RTB connectors are attached to it. So this is it's probably the core piece of retail media, because it's about, are you able to serve ads, product ads that are relevant enough so that people actually buy that stuff? And this is, again, it's crucial because it not only drives the ad revenues, but it's also impacts the retail business to a great extent. And then you have the other side, which is a front end where people spend money, and where you set the budgets, where you steer the pacing, and where you set your bids. And what you can do now, also through this RTB connection, you can have one product that goes incredibly deep on the ad serving side. And this is kind of the approach we have taken, building lots of features in a very powerful tool that focuses on this aspect. And then, for example, at Home Depot, we partner with Vantage, and they provide a front end that is incredibly powerful. It covers Meta and Pinterest and Google Ads and digital out of home and all things you can imagine. At the same time, you don't have to force brands, and Melanie, I guess this was your point, into that front end, because there's still an RTB way you can allow brands to put money into Google or Microsoft or wherever and funnel those budgets in. And this modularity and this such a composable stack is incredibly powerful for retailers and solves many problems.
I agree. Particularly doubling down on your point on the composable stack, we moved to that modular approach last year because we recognized we had built an out-of-the-box solution, but increasingly the market was commanding for a more flexible approach where, for example, they could either use our out-of-the-box white-labeled front end, or they wanted to build their own front end. Your example with Vantage is exactly speaking to the increasing desires of retailers building a more holistic front end across multiple media tactics. But that's a business model in itself, all right? So you've seen us announce last year an expansive set of OMS and front-end partnerships because we recognize that. And so whether it's Vantage or Placements.io, Booster, Salesforce, and many other partners, we have a broad ecosystem of partners that our retailers can tap into to build retail media their way. They can use us as a one-stop shop to power their front end. They can also build their own front end. We have an API-based solution, so they have all the flexibility they need to do that. And then simultaneously through our ad server, they're connected into that ecosystem of demand partners. And this is just an example, right? I think the industry will continue to evolve. To your point, there will always be new companies popping up with new innovation. And if there are very valuable point solutions that can augment our solution, we'll continue to add them to our partnership roster. And other things we'll invest in directly. But yeah, completely aligned with the industry moving towards a more modular approach.
And Andreas, from what you're saying and also on the articles, there is like an underlying claim that your take and other startups' take is better. How much proof is there to that? How much truth is there to that?
I don't think this is what I tried to express with my article. It's not about Pentaleap or Cody or other cavil against Criteo. My point is rather, in the past, Criteo sold this monolithic stack with ad serving and front end and sales built into this. And this, according to Melanie, now seems to also change. And the difference in this new world is now that you can stitch together different components, and you can follow a best-in-breed approach, use, for example, our ad serving that is incredibly powerful, and stitch together this with a front end from Vantage or Zitcha or whoever provides a front end. And the combination of different specialized products, the division of supply and demand, this unlocks a ton of value and gives retailers choices. Even an example, if, for example, an ad server is no longer living up to the retailer's expectations, and you have a separate company running on the demand side, providing the front end, you just replace this ad serving tech and you keep the rest. So no brand migration, no nothing. And vice versa. So you gain flexibility, and you also gain leverage in pricing discussions because you are less dependent on this one huge thing. And that's a very positive evolution we are currently seeing here.
There's something I'd love to address because I think it may be a misunderstanding or perhaps just a clarification I can seek here. This move to modular is not new. We announced it last year. We've been working with various retailers across the world already in a modular capacity. I would like to just highlight some choices. You can lean on our demand-side sales team or not. That was a choice I already had back in 2020 at Macy's, and I've chosen back in the day to use both. So retailers have always had choices on whether they want to leverage our demand-side solutions or not, whether they want to be connected or not, whether they want to build their own front end or leverage ours is also possible because we've moved towards an API-based solution. So certainly, I think Criteo is known for having expansive solutions, and I'm very proud of the breadth and depth of capabilities we have. But it is not a new development that we're modular. We've worked in a modular approach for a significant time. What is true in the most recent months, there is more activity on test and learn and new startups, new providers popping up, and a greater extent of, I would call it experimentation and trials in the ecosystem. And I think that is a very normal thing. If you're running a retail media business, you need to keep moving your stack forward. And so you're always going to listen and learn and try and see things. I think what gives me a great degree of confidence in our solution is that we see retailers try things and they stick with us. we have seen retailers go to some startups who told them the world, and then they came back. And I think what's really key is that at the end of the day, you need to innovate. You need to continue to advance. We continue to build more partnerships to allow to provide opportunities for our retailers to easily add more elements to their stack. And some of the recent announcements on Miracle and others are exactly moving that direction, making it easy for them to innovate and building more into their ecosystem. But we also want to help simplify things for them, right? Because you do see a lot of options in the ecosystem, but retailers will over time struggle to have what I call a Frankenstack of like various ad servers, various solutions, and you build on this and you build on that, and you have all these ad calls, and then you do need to make sure that you keep sane, right? Your operations team needs to stay sane. Your engineering teams need to be staying sane. Your financials need to stay sane. And so while there needs to be a balance of experimentation and adding more partnerships to an ecosystem, but also doing that in a way that makes it simple and efficient and effective. And so it's not about be like dominating or like having a monopoly and all these crazy terms that may be out there. It's truly about making it easy and with an enterprise grade solution, because the days where this is a side hustle is over, right? As you pointed out, Andreas, retail media has scaled and the risks are real, right? Like if you're having several $100 million of profit running through some pipes, you better be careful on what you're doing, particularly if some players are not quite as proven. And so I think that's where it's prudent to innovate. It's prudent to keep trying things out, but also it's equally prudent to make sure that that a business is not exposed to any risks, and that any innovation ultimately docks onto the existing infrastructure in a way that mitigates risk while optimizing any upside.
I'm actually very excited to hear this. It's great that the industry has moved to that point. Like we seem to already be in a world where it really, if for retailers to choose their tech, if we can agree on this, it's no longer whether there is demand built in and the dollars will flow in through one or another product. It will boil down, in my opinion, to a set of different things. How good is the ad serving is one.
Yeah.
Are ads that emerge relevant? Can you bring in demand through RTB? Do you have those connectors? And many companies will have that. Do you have a front end that can cover all different channels? And last but not least, if you have similar capabilities, what's the price you are paying for a product? And this is a healthy ecosystem that is functional.
The fifth one or sixth one would be, and perhaps that should be actually the first one, is delivering performance to the advertiser as well.
Which boils down to the previous points, right? How good is your ad serving? Can you run a full funnel campaign? Do you have those RTB connectors? And I just recommend retailers to focus on those details, not on built-in demand, or is there a sales engine behind it? Do dollars flow through? And thoroughly compare the technical capabilities and then choose one over the other solution. And that's exactly what I think retailers needed so badly over the last years. And it's now happening, which is very good news for the market.
And Andreas, Melanie brought up the term Frankenstack for when you have multiple solutions instead of one, maybe. What would you say about that? Because I think that's a very interesting point.
I mean, look, I think ideally in a perfect world, you would have that one solution that could handle all things and would solve all your problems. The problem with that is, and we've seen this in the past, such a solution will be very expensive because you will be locked in a huge thing that is very hard to replace. So the question is does somebody want a clear differentiation and really be ahead of the competition, and is then also willing to accept some more complexity and simply see what do you need in order to perform. And what Home Depot did is actually pretty smart. They looked for the best ad server. They chose Pentaleap for sponsored products. It's Cavill on the display side. It's Vantage on the front end side. And this is the way they put things together. Is this the easiest turnkey solution? No, but once it's set up, it's incredibly powerful and gets probably much closer to what an Amazon has compared to, all right, I go shopping and I buy this one thing and all is good.
Does that have like all that we're talking about, does that have like an impact on like the shopping experience of someone online? Out of curiosity more than anything.
The shopping experience boils down to the ad serving. So it's a technical term some people may not understand. Ad serving means you show ads on site, and it's partially display banners, but it's mostly sponsored products. And those ads are the products themselves. So a retailer runs a huge operation on the retail side. And now you have to choose, should I show my normal search results or should I squeeze some ad in? And if that ad you squeeze in isn't fully relevant, people won't click on it. So you make no ad money because it's a CPC model. But much worse, you take prime inventory away for products that then don't sell. No clicks, logically, no sales. And that's what we try to solve when we position our product. We didn't go very broad. We identified this one key issue that impacts the whole retail operation, and we solved this one first before we went broader and brought in like video ads and display and many other things. So that's how you need to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's the core piece. And I think particularly if you zoom out a few years, the industry is speaking a lot about AI and agentic. And I think we need to think about what will the world of retail look like in several years, not just like today. And I anticipate that retailers' shopping environments are going to evolve. There will be more agentic experiences. The traditional search experience will evolve. And I think what needs to be true in the future is that retailers will need to balance protecting the integrity of the product recommendation to the customer with a need of the brand to drive incremental outcomes. I think what the industry is spending significant time about debating right now is that alignment with organic. And I think that's a really meaty and really juicy topic, because there should be a precision in what ad gets served. And it can't be just about the bid, right? It needs to be an intelligent auction that is balancing the relevancy, the bids, the organic alignment. But then importantly, there needs to be also a factor around incrementality for the brand. Because if the pendulum swings too much towards let's make the merchants happy by serving the products that are organically already ranking high, two things are going to happen then. One, the largest brands are going to start questioning, okay, now the merchants are happy, the organic products are showing up, but then why do I need to advertise if I pay for organic clicks and small brands that are ranking low will have a hard time moving up to the front, then why do I even invest? So there's a risk that large brands are going to shut off their investments, and there is going to be a tremendous risk for the mid to long tail of the retailer no longer being able to compete. And so the challenge is real. The answer isn't easy either. And so I think from our perspective, the industry needs new solutions that help a retailer optimize holistically to basically arbitrate between what's the optimal product to be shown to a customer, and then what's the margin benefit from an ad revenue, and how do basically that intelligent decisioning logic, I think, is going to be important both for the dynamics that are happening in the retail landscape today, but even more crucial several years from now when there will be even more agentic experiences on retailers' websites.
I subscribe to this. It ties into the measurement piece, like you have a huge problem on the measurement side. We know all brands complain about lack of transparency in retail media. I just read surveys from McKinsey and BCG, and measurement always ranks first. Nobody has really solved that problem. With ad serving that is more based on the organic, where you basically boost products from their organic rank to give them more leverage. There's a unique opportunity to actually solve this. And we've built this into our platform because you know where a product would have shown up originally organically. So you can calculate the traffic uplift you grant. It's a huge opportunity to actually provide more transparency, because otherwise you have this parallel world, like an organic product shows up, you replicate it somewhere. It's always... It's not fully solved yet, but I think we are getting closer to tackling that problem. So generally agree with that point.
Gotta ask you guys, and just to let the audience know, we agreed more or less we agreed the agenda more or less, but this one I didn't put in, but I think it's a good one to ask, especially now that we're going into RFP cycles and so on. I'll ask you to bet we talk sometimes on like the next years. I'll be more specific and more short term. Where do you think we'll be this time next year?
I'll go. I'll be bullish and say that I think the larger brands and agencies are going to take much greater command over how they want to run their media programs. I think their bar of expectation is going to be heightened, and they will continue to be under pressure from retailers, and they be negotiations to increase their spend, but they're likely also going to raise the bar for the retailer in terms of what needs to be true for them to continue to invest. I expect that in a year from now, many more brands will consolidate their spend into a platform that makes it easy for them to see their spend holistically, for them to manage their spend holistically, and then also they'll increasingly move from legacy ways of buying retail media to more modernized, specifically auction. We launched auction-based display just a few months ago. We see the adoption and the shift from more, but on both the retailer and the brand side, where the days of like more traditional fixed price buying are not necessarily over. There will always be a role and a place for it, but we see a really strong feedback and an adoption and move towards more modern ways of buying display media, which is really a precursor to then greater connectivity and fluidity in the ecosystem with the years in the years to come.
I think we will see a dramatic improvement of for the retailers. The retailers will gain a lot more leverage. I think the level playing field will lead to much more diversity and a more even market share of the different players. I think retailers will buy at lower prices in the future. And I believe that the private markets thing, where you sell direct, will probably rather stagnate, and the programmatic aspect, network budgets, that this will start dominating to kill this fragmentation issue everyone is suffering from. So those 3 points.
Excellent. Well, could continue for an hour or two. You guys have been great. This has been so much fun. And look, again, from what I was saying at the beginning, I think this is super refreshing. I think we've all sat in panels and events where a lot was talked, but nothing was really said. And I think that today we talked a lot, but we also said a lot. And I think there's like plenty of takeaways that we can all take with us. I learned a lot myself. So yeah, thanks both for showing up and sharing your opinions.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you, Melanie, for joining.
And thanks to our audience. By the way, we'll leave both Melanie and Andreas's LinkedIn profiles on the show notes. So if whoever's curious to learn more about their point of view or retail media, you want something more specific, could get in touch with them. Finally, I wish you, our listeners as well, but especially you two, both the best of success. And I'll see you somewhere in the field very soon.
You're everywhere. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.